Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. This is another in our very special The Library is Not a Quiet Place Anymore series. Joining me right now is the producer of that series. Here she is, Nicole Belcastro. Hey, Nicole, how are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. We're really excited. This series is, I think, so insightful and gives us a great look into what is going on in the libraries at many of our schools around the country. I think it's something that parents don't really even think about sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the library is definitely a forgotten place as technology becomes more and more prevalent and in the hands of younger and younger people. I think it's easy to overlook that, but I definitely think it's valuable to highlight the good that they do and the loss that would be felt in a lot of these schools and communities if there were no funding for the school libraries.
Absolutely. And today you're speaking to another great school librarian. Who are we going to meet?
Today we're going to meet Rhonda Jenkins, and she is a librarian at Kendall Elementary School in Illinois.
Excellent. Right now, here is Nicole and Rhonda.
What are the age of the students that visit your library?
I am kindergarten through 5th, so it is 5-year-olds to 11-year-olds.
That's a lot of the other librarians I talk to. They also work in elementary schools and talking about students those ages. And a lot of their experiences have been that they enjoy working with elementary students more because they're so young and they're learning and starting to come into themselves. And they see that happening in the library, and I was wondering if you've had any experiences like that.
Well, yeah, I just remember one student when she was a kindergartner. She come to the library. She loved books, but she told me, Miss Jenkins, I can't read. I said, oh, of course you can. You read a lot of things. You don't even realize you're reading. And so I introduced her to a couple of books that were designed for encouraging young readers to read. And it was the Owl Diaries series by Rebecca Elliott. And I gave it to her, and she fell in love with that book. It's a series of the Owl Diaries is a series, and she started reading, and she is now going into 5th grade, and she constantly tells me all of the series that she's read. The Warrior series, the Wings of Fire series. I mean, she just cannot get enough of reading. So from being a timid little kindergartner to this magnificent 5th grade reader, she's just incredible.
I love that story so much, and it reminds me a little bit of myself. I didn't have a school library. It was just a room for us, and we weren't allowed to take the books out, and there were just tables where if you had to make up a test, you would go in there. So I didn't really have the full school library experience, so I always went to my public library, and I used to do the same thing. I would check out like 30 books at one time. I would take the whole series, and I'd read the whole thing. And I'm so glad that students now have a place for that because I would have loved to have had that. And I was wondering if you could talk about the roles that your library plays, because I know that some libraries, it's not just about reading and books anymore. There are so many other resources that it gives to students. And I was wondering if maybe you could talk about what a day-to-day like is for you working at the school library.
You kind of froze on me, sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. I was wondering if you could talk about like what resources the library provides or what a typical day looks like for you working at the school library.
Okay, so one of the biggest resources that I have implemented in my library is Makerspace. In the last couple of years, we haven't been able to because of COVID and contact and this kind of thing. But before, it was a booming place. Kids loved to come to Makerspace to create. And my Makerspace was set up on 2 different sides. One was make and take. The other side was stay and play. So in the make and take side, there was toilet paper rolls to thread to buttons to glue, scissors, paper. I mean, everything you can think of for them to create in their own mind what they wanted. And that was probably the most active side. The other side was based on iPads and electricity, little gadgets to make things with, and a few other things like that. But the creativity that's shown is just amazing. And so the one student I was telling you about the Owl Diaries, she then started to make owl nests and owl things. And I would take pictures of those owl things and send them off, tweet them out to the author. And she just absolutely loved to know that Rebecca Elliott was seeing her creation. So, but they just love Makerspace. And the problem with it, though, is always messy. So, because the kids, forget that they need to clean up. But I would close it. If it was dirty after a class left, I would say, Makerspace is closed. And they were like, can we clean it up, please? I'm like, of course you can. And as soon as they clean it up, it's theirs again, open. The other thing, too, that I do as part of my role is to teach them technology. I'm the resident geek, and I'm proud of it. And so a lot of the things that I teach them are how to use their Chromebooks. They're all assigned one-to-one Chromebooks. And so they need to know how to use them efficiently. And that's another big part of my job. But just also to be able to collaborate with teachers to find out what they need and how I can help, because the library is a big part of our school.
What has it been like collaborating with teachers? Are there any projects? I know that some librarians I've talked to have collaborated with art teachers or English teachers. So what has your experience been like?
When I first came to be the librarian at this school, Kendall, there wasn't any artwork on the walls. And I've got really a high ceiling and a high wall that I could put something on. So I took the book, Beautiful Hands. I think it's by Catherine Otoshi. And I worked with the art teacher, and each grade level came up with an idea after reading the book of I don't know if you know the book, but the book is about using your hands to create art. And so they did finger paints on posters, giant size posters. And I have them hanging up in the library now. They're big, giant sheets of paper that one was flowers. So the kindergartners made their fingerprints as the flowers. Some first graders did butterflies. So there was a kindergarten and first grade picture, photo, not a photo, but a banner. Basically, it's a banner. And there's a dinosaur group that they wanted to do dinosaurs, so they used their hands to paint dinosaurs. So that was one thing that I really appreciated, collaborating with the art teacher to create.
I love that story so much, and it reminds me of things that I've read and other conversations I've had, that a lot of public librarians and school librarians really want to make the library a school community space and a space that is primarily for the students. And I think having their artwork up is such a great way to do that. And is that a priority for you, to make the library kind of a safe space? And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about that, or how you go about that.
Absolutely. It is the safe place. It's the middle of our school, so everyone always sees it as they're passing by. So it needed to be a place that they felt like they could come to and be comfortable. So again, it's a transformation that had to take place in the library. Before I came, it was probably more like your experience when you didn't have the library. It was just very plain and not inviting at all. So I started bringing in comfortable furniture. I saw a couch on sale at a garage sale and stuffed it in my car and brought it in. And then the kids were like, "We can sit here?" Yes, you can sit here and you can read. And I have other places that were more off to the side. So if you want to sit by yourself, you could. I have an A-frame that has books on it. There's space underneath, and I have our library lion under there. So the kids go under there and they read, and they're sitting on the lion and they're reading together. Even on my back wall, I changed one big giant wall that says, "This is your library. It's a place to learn, to be inspired." There's some other things. I can't remember exactly what the quote is, but it's there always, because it's not my library. It's our library. The other thing that I made it easier for them, for me, I believe it's easier, is I genreified the library. on my fiction side, so they know exactly where all of the historical fiction books are, where all of the mystery books are, where realistic fiction. So it's the time that they have to access things is quicker because they don't have to go searching through everything to find one book because they can go to the whole historical fiction section and see, oh, all of these are historical fiction. Yes, exactly. So it makes it a lot easier for them. So accessibility and then just being a fun person makes it a nice community environment.
That is so great. And I was wondering if you could talk about, because I love that it's a place that kids can sit and read and take out their own books. And is there a schedule when each class comes in the library, or are they allowed to come and go as they please? What is that like?
There is a schedule. They are assigned a time to come down in their classroom. With Makerspace, which I hope to be able to go back to next year, is during their rotation during their English language time. They come down in groups for 20 minutes, and some come to the Makerspace and some go to the library. So there is a set time for them to come. Yeah.
And I was wondering if, because getting into some of the, I don't want to say issues because I don't want it to sound negative, but this series, because I'm an intern for the podcast this summer, and I really wanted to highlight all of the school librarians because when I've been doing research and I've done stories throughout my semester about how a lot of the school libraries are losing funding or they're closing, or I really feel like a lot of librarians in general are just so underappreciated because, like you said, you offer technology, so many resources that kids need to have. So I was wondering if you've had any experiences that you wish people knew more about the job of being specifically a school librarian, or if there are any challenges being a school librarian.
There are lots of things that a school librarian can help with, especially with copyright issues. That's a big one. So sometimes you could hear conversations because if you're meeting with teachers and they said, oh yeah, we just made a copy of this. Wait, you made a copy of what? Let's make sure that there's no copyright infringement because you never want that to come back and impact your school. There have been several cases where teachers have copied things, not at our school, and the company has actually sought damages from them because of using their information without permission. So you have to be careful of that. So you have to instill that. Also, digital citizenship is something that I also teach because it's important for students when they're using computers to be safe online. And so there's a number of lessons that we go through to help them understand that. The other thing too is I know there are several librarians I'm hearing in some of the Facebook groups I'm in that they're being downsized. Their libraries are being taken away. Their positions are being given to an assistant instead of it being a school librarian. So it is tough, but it's a very important job because we help maintain that balance. Especially because, yes, several teachers, most teachers have amazing classroom libraries. They do because we spend our money. When I was a classroom teacher, I spent lots of money to support my classroom library, but it can never be as big as a school library could be. So the options for students are much better, and finding that right book for that right student is so necessary because that's what we do. We help connect students to the books and things that they need to make their school life enjoyable.
Yes, and you perfectly summarized exactly why I wanted to do this podcast, because the connection between the school librarian and the students is so important. And my mom also works in a public school, and we've been talking about classroom libraries because when I started doing this and I was talking to her about the series and the interviews I've been doing, her school does not even have a library. And it's not the school I went to growing up, but it's still where I'm from. And so many of the schools, I know you mentioned downsizing, but so many of the schools are just losing them completely, just completely taken away. And it really is upsetting. And I know another issue that I've been seeing, and I don't know if any of these have been part of your experience, but I know that there have been a lot of book bans, and especially in school libraries, that a lot of librarians are being forced to take representative and diverse books off their shelves. And I was wondering if you've had any experience having to do that so far.
Not me specifically, but others in my district have. We have 21 elementary schools in my school district, and some of those definitely have been challenged. But we have a whole process that is, if somebody's going to challenge a book, it's not just coming to the school and saying, well, I don't want my student to read this book. I want it off the shelf. That's the big thing. I want it off the shelf. Well, but why? Why do parents, because usually it's parents, feel the need to take a book off the shelf that someone might need? You have control over your own library at home. You also have control over your children. So if your child brings home a book that you don't like, tell them to take it back and let somebody else check it out. So I don't know why they feel the need to try to take over and to make it a choice for every child, for every family. That's just not fair.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. And obviously, Reading with Your Kids podcast, I've been diving into books that are for younger children. And there's so many books that it's not like, and with representation, there are books that represent families that all look different. Or I know that one librarian I talked to, they'll have a story time where they'll try to read a book about any, like, even if the character has, if it's a normal looking family, what society deems normal, it'll be maybe one parent is experiencing depression or something like that, or a student is in the book. And so that way those students don't feel so alone. And you're absolutely right that it takes it away from everybody. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about some of the books in your library that are representative, or the students' reception to those books, or if it makes them feel more not so alone. Because I know some students from other school libraries that when they find books with their own identity, they feel a comfort there.
Yes, absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head with that, because students do need to see themselves in books. We have a very diverse population, and I've had some of my students that are Pakistani, and there's a book about a Pakistani girl, Amina's Voice. When she read it, she was like, oh my goodness, this is me. I've never read a book about me before. And so when she said that, again, I love to tweet and talk to authors. I sent that to Henna Khan, the author, and she just responded, and that student treasures that response still today, because I'll take a picture of it and send it to her and say, this is what she said about you. So it's so important. Even the kids, we did have a family that had two fathers. And so why can't they be represented by a book of two fathers in a library? Everyone needs to, because that's how you help and you understand others, and you can be more accepting of the things and decisions that don't impact you. But if that's your friend, you need to understand, so you could read about that as well. So it helps us all if we could just stop being so judgmental.
I completely agree with you. And I know from other librarians I've talked to, they haven't had to pull books off their shelves either. And some of them have actually been the opposite, where they have been given grants to go get books that cover all types of characters, and ways that with different political events going on, that way younger students can digest it even more, because reading really does do that. It makes all of these big worldly things seem so, if they put like a 10-year-old as the main character, when other kids read that, they're going to gravitate towards it and be able to understand. And sorry, I'm trying to remember where I was going with that. But I know that a lot of the issues that are happening right now with the book bans and things like that, it really is taking away a lot. And I don't know if you feel that maybe they don't understand the job of the school librarian, like you said, because if you don't want your child reading that, that's fine, and you can bring it back, but you can't take that away for everybody else. So I was wondering if you feel like the job is not completely understood the way that it's trying to be regulated right now.
I don't know if it's an idea of understanding. I think it's more because they know, because research shows the importance of a school library.
Yes.
I think it's a matter of money. It's like they see the librarian and they think that we're sitting there reading books all day. My goodness, they couldn't be farther from the truth. So I think if they could just live in our shoes for a little bit, come and watch, come and see, they'd understand the humongous impact that a school librarian can have.
And I don't know if funding itself is an issue particularly for your school, but are there any things that you're looking to implement? I know the school year has winded down now, but are there anything that you're looking forward to adding to the library for next year?
Well, I'm looking so forward to getting my Makerspace back because the kids kept asking, when is Makerspace coming back? They really, really enjoy Makerspace. So that's the one thing. The other, I guess for me and in my school district, I feel supported because of the things that I've been able to do. But I do understand and have empathy for those who don't have it as easy as I do in my district. My district has agreed that librarians are important, and I'm happy about that. But other districts just haven't done that. Nearby districts, there was one that was nearby. They were going to get rid of all their school librarians, and everybody mustered up and said, this is wrong, and they ended up keeping them. But for how long? And how long is that fight? And as people start to retire, who's going to continue that fight?
Yeah. I was wondering if you could tell me, just because I think that would also be such a great thing to highlight, what district was it that is going to close their libraries?
It was St. Charles School District.
Okay, thank you so much, because I definitely want to reach out to some people over there, and thank you so much, because I think that deserves, like you said, who's going to continue it, and I just think that, especially with the Reading with Your Kids podcast, a lot of parents listen to read with their kids, so I think that if their kids don't have a library, or if their child has a dwindling library, to really show them, like, maybe they could go to their PTA and maybe they could talk about revamping the library or just something like that. And I think so many people can benefit from hearing about all these different librarian experiences. And I was wondering if I've been closing out each episode. I know you talked a little bit about other students' experiences, but I found that a lot of when students, like, reception to the library is shared, that, like you said, because people, not everybody who listens to the podcast can go to your school and see the library. So I was wondering if you could just maybe share a few experiences of, like, students' reception to the library.
Well, I have second graders that will email me and they'll tell me, Ms. Jenkins, I love the library. It's the best place in the building. Ms. Jenkins, we appreciate you as the librarian. It's that kind of the joy that you get from their hearts, right? And also even from their parents. But a lot of times volunteers come in and they will tell me that, the library has had such an impact on my child. Now, unless they told me, I would never really know. I can see the growth in the kids, especially as I watch them grow from kindergarten through fifth grade. I can see that in them, but unless their parents share that with me, I wouldn't really know. So I'm always appreciative that they would share that kind of information with me. I've had the ones that have gone off to sixth grade and seventh grade tell me, Ms. Jenkins, I miss the library so much. I miss you too, but I really miss the library. It's like our library at the middle school is just not the same. It's nice, but it's just not the same. So, it's important and I love it. I have also some clubs that I do after school. I have a podcast club that I did for the first year this year with fifth graders, and it turned out really well. I was really pleased with the results of that. But I also have a listening to reading. We go home, 4:30, we get on the Zoom together and we'll listen to a book together for 12 weeks. And that reception has been great for mostly my third graders that enjoy doing that. So again, making that connection, because we're connectors with students in different ways, just really kind of just makes them love the library even more.
And I especially love that when you guys listen to books together, it's outside of school at 4:30, like at home, because that's another thing, like librarians being connectors, that's even outside of school and continuing those resources and continuing to read at home. And I just think I love all of the things you've implemented in your library, and I'm so glad that your students have benefited from that. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. And thank you so much for the important job that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole, that was another great conversation. Rhonda is an amazing, amazing woman, an amazing librarian.
Yeah, she definitely is. And she definitely does a great job being a school librarian to her students. And you can tell she really loves her job and takes a lot of pride in it.
Yeah. And what's the big takeaway for you from that conversation?
Definitely right after Leah's interview, I had interviewed Rhonda, and I definitely feel like they have similar experiences in a way. And I really loved that Rhonda has a poster in her library where it says, "This is your library," because she was very big on saying, it's not my library, it's a space for my students. And I definitely think that's a sign of a very good school librarian, in my opinion, to be able to put your students first and to let them know that above all, like, the library is theirs and they always have a safe space in the school.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. And I wish I had a poster right here that said, "Nicole, this is your podcast series," because you've been doing a great job with this series. I want to thank you for putting together this episode.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody listening. And thank you to Rhonda as well.
Absolutely. And thank you to the rest of my team. Fatima Khan, Rory Gray, Marabella Q, Rain Pan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, Nicole, I think you'd join me. We want to thank the people listening. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place. How do they do that, Nicole?
By reading with their kids.
We'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.